You're listening to Music Tectonics.
Hey, it's Dmitri with Music Tectonics at Midem. We're back. I know we've been dropping lots of episodes at you. Midem is got so much going on. Midemlab in particular, we've been talking to lots of startups, and I've got another one here. I'm here with Hazel Savage from Musiio. How are you, Hazel?
I'm very well, thanks. Thanks for having me, Dmitri.
I was checking out your LinkedIn profile, which actually I've looked at your LinkedIn profile a lot because you're pretty active there.
Oh well, I love to social post.
Yeah,
I'm big on the marketing.
You're good, yeah. And I noticed that your first position or early position was as a physical retail buyer, classical buyer at HMV in London, right?
Yeah, that's true. So actually, even a little further back than that, when I was at university, I used to work the weekends at my local HMV store, just, on the till. So that was, when I was 18, 19, and then I went full time as a classical music buyer down in the London store.
Nice.
But yeah, I mean,
Moved up the ranks.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, I got to hit the big city. I got to go to London. That's where all the jobs are.
That's great. And now you've made a full total pivot or transition. Maybe, I wonder if there's any other classical buyers from that era that are doing anything close to what you're doing.
That is a really good point. But I guess to me, it was like I got a job in a record store because that was what I loved. I loved music and I was at university. I never, ever imagined that that would turn into the full-time job. I assumed that was just what I did to earn a bit of money, and I'm going to end up in a bank. I'm going to end up as a teacher or a bus driver. I didn't think that would become the whole career.
So funny. So let's jump to it. What does Musiio do?
So Musiio is an artificial intelligence company for the music industry. We work with sync companies, streaming companies, record labels, anyone with a large catalog of music that wants to tag it, search it, sort it, or playlist it for any reason. We fully automate that using AI.
Whoa! So you've got lots of possible customers then.
We do indeed. But I'm mostly excited about the streaming services and the sync companies. From the sync perspective, imagine you've got a catalog of anywhere from 100,000 to 1 million tracks, and a request comes in. Hey, do you guys have anything that sounds like X? It's for a TV show on Y, and then you've got to think. Okay, we've got 100,000 songs. What have I got in there? What have I heard? Can I ask my buddy? What we do is we allow you to drop the reference track into your own database and pull out the 10 closest matches in under 2 seconds.
Whoa. Yes, that sounds very powerful for sync.
Yeah.
And so is it going to be people using their own catalogs as opposed to music supervisors digging for stuff?
Predominantly, yeah. Our first wave, obviously, we're a seed-funded company. We're about 11 months old. We're currently working with people with their own internal catalogs, so sync companies and labels with their own internal catalogs. And that's because we would, the goal is to work towards a big open source platform where people can, dig for treasure. But legally getting access to that music is going to take a lot longer than the 11 months we've been going so far. So I'm working on that in the background.
How long is the ingestion process for a catalog? Is it pretty tough to get the catalog into the system and start to get the tagging going? And
it really depends, because when we work with a lot of music companies, we sort of say, oh, how do you want to deliver files? Do you have like AWS? Are you using Google Cloud? Sometimes they physically send us a hard drive with the audio on, in which case the longest part of that process is the postal system to actually get those tracks to us. Because if we're able to, process the files from AWS and then process them in-house, our current rate, we can process about 1 million tracks a day.
Whoa, that's crazy. Are you doing that? 1 million a day?
We could. I think the biggest amount so far has been 100,000, but wow. We just want to let people know it's possible.
That's fun. Do you guys have like special little meters that show the speed? Like,
there was a fun graph the other day that had a lot of colors on, which I believe was different servers and units. But yeah, that's not necessarily my area of expertise.
So how did you get from being a classical buyer at physical retail to where you are? Where did you get the idea for this current company?
Well, I have to say, so when I was working at HMV, I kind of wanted to get out of the retail game because being customer facing, as anyone who's ever worked in retail knows, it's very hard work. It's a real toll dealing with the public, 24/7. So I was kind of applying for jobs here, there, and everywhere. And I think I sent out about 150 CVs. And the first interview I got, and then the first job I got, was for a little known startup that hardly anyone had heard of called Shazam. And it just so happened that the guy that reviewed my CV had also worked in the same record store.
Oh, wow.
And he said to me, he saw that on my CV and went, oh, she'll be a laugh. because that was the kind of person they hired. So we went, get her in, she'll be fun. And so really that was kind of my first proper music tech job. And so that's, we're talking well over 10 years ago now. But, having experienced working at Shazam and then going on to Universal and Pandora, it's kind of the company I have now is a sort of a internal collaboration of all the previous stuff I've learned.
Wow, that's cool. And what were you doing at Shazam and Pandora and Universal?
So when I was at Shazam, my first job was it was called a digital music encoder. And so I was one of the people responsible for making sure that we had the songs on the system so they could be recognized by the Shazam service. Gotcha. So it's, not a super glamorous job, but,
someone had to do it.
Yeah, well, exactly. We had a little team of us just going through and, occasionally I'd meet people in the street who hadn't really heard of Shazam and they'd be like, oh, is it you on the other end of the phone? Like, typing out the name of the song. It's like, yeah, I know 14 million tracks by heart. I'm just, oh yeah, hey, Alan. Do you reckon this is a Diplo remix? Of course, that's how it works.
Yeah, exactly. And then what about at Universal? What were you doing?
So when I moved to Universal, I was like a content manager. It was in Australia, and they had their own online e-commerce store, and they would build custom e-commerce stores for the artists that were in Australia. So I started doing a lot of the editorial content, a lot of the visual content, a lot of the marketing, social media, kind of like full service little marketing agency, but in-house.
Nice. And then Pandora for a couple of years as well.
Yeah, so I was lucky to be part of the team that launched Pandora in Australia and New Zealand. So there was 3 of us that launched it, and I was one of those 3. So that was good fun years.
That's really cool. And check it out. We talked about the UK, we talked about Australia, and now you're in Singapore.
Yeah, well, as I say to everyone, I just go where the work is. So, I moved to Australia originally because Universal headhunted me. And then I moved to Singapore again because I was offered another job. I was sought out. So, I guess, marketing lead for a music tech company is relatively specific. So I kind of have just moved around wherever the work's been.
Well, we're going to dig into the larger landscape of music tech, but let's get real local. What's going on in Singapore? What's the music tech scene like there?
It's not so much of a scene as our office, in that, we're quite proud of the fact, actually, that we're the first ever VC-funded music tech company in Singapore ever. There has never been another VC-funded music tech company. I mean, there are loads in LA, there are a bunch of them in London, but Singapore is not known for music tech. So there aren't music tech-specific investors. Excuse me. And there's not so much of a music tech scene altogether.
Okay, well, that's the scene. You're the scene. You're making a scene. So
a little bit.
Yeah. So I'll be curious to see, when you think about the music tech landscape, what are the things that get you most excited?
So I'm really excited, when I speak to other people. Obviously, AI is really the core focus of my day-to-day life currently. And, there's this kind of thread talking about, like, creator tools. So how do you integrate elements of AI writing, curation? And what are the kind of philosophical implications of, having an AI-assisted written track? So this is the kind of trend that I love to get in on a deep conversation with, because, at what point does it become not wholly your recording? At what point does it become, a collaboration with an AI? And I had a great conversation with someone once where they were like, I see a point in the future where music is released and it's got that, like, almost like that kind of butcher's stamp on it, 100% human created, because there'll be so much hybrid music. So that's kind of what I'm fascinated by. That's
going to be the non-GMO organic stamp in music, huh?
Yeah, same design, but it says 100% human made.
Yeah, that'll be interesting. It's interesting because you're not working directly in that area, but that's one of the things that you've been... I mean, I think it makes sense because you're kind of tracking on all the kind of music tech scene.
Yeah, and I mean, I see the words AI and music come up together, and I got to check it out and find out what's going on. So yeah, majority of the times. But yeah, absolutely, we're not in the creation space, we're in the curation space. But I'm still fascinated by the whole industry.
Yeah, what do you say to the folks that are like, oh, we're hitting barriers with the DSPs, we're hitting barriers with the record labels, we're hitting barriers, with radio every step of the way, and now the robots are coming after us. They're going to take our jobs away.
Yeah, well, I think for us, when it comes to our technology, I specifically didn't want to build a company that in any way damaged the industry. I'm not interested in taking away jobs, and as I think I said in my pitch at Midemlabs, it's not like for A&R teams have grown from like 2 to 200 people to match the influx of content. They just kept it at 2 people, so now it's just really inefficient. And the same with playlisting. Don't get rid of your external curators, but a team of 20 curators can't, playlist for 800 million subscribers, for example. So how do you just augment those roles? So actually those curators can then do more in-depth deals with local labels, focus on artists, do more promotions. So for us, it's about that efficiency, not so much the robots are coming.
I'm really glad you looped it back around to what you're doing, because we haven't talked about the playlisting component. What does that look like for users of Musiio? Which of your user types would be using it for building playlists, and how does that actually work?
So our customers are B2B. So we sell our technology as a kind of a like white labeled service and API solution that streaming services, whether they're attached to a telco, whether they're standalone, whether they're an integrated brand streaming service, and we can basically fully curate your content for your listeners in a personalized way. So if your radio stations, rather than have your curators have to pre-program a load of radio stations, let the user drop a seed track and we'll pre-fill the rest of the playlist. So therefore they can drop any seed track. They're now not limited. And every time your users log in, they're also able to go to their own profile and find that kind of, daily or weekly kind of like playlist that's pre-built for them based on what they've already listened to and what we think they'll like.
So in a sense, almost like a radio type format, or will it be a static playlist? Or both?
It's really flexible. It kind of depends, and we work with what the streaming services tell us they want. If they want to replicate a great radio product and kind of endless playlist of music that, is then also filtered based on what they listen, don't listen, skip, thumb up, thumb down, that's possible. But also if they just want to serve direct into, people's inboxes, hey, we built a discovery playlist for you this month, click here to check it out, and it's customized for every individual person. With AI, you can do that at scale.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's sounding a lot to me, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. There was a moment when Echo Nest was kind of a darling of the industry and was very flexible because lots of people could use it. Mm-hmm. And obviously, when they got acquired by Spotify, the other DSPs didn't really want to share data across and so forth, so that they were no longer independent. So. Yeah. Nobody's really stepped in that space. Is this kind of, it sounds like the technology's changed quite a bit. I know they were doing a lot of web scraping around lexical data to go with kind of building suggestions and recommendations. But it sounds almost like, even though the technology's probably different, that's a role that's kind of missing from a lot of the industry, and that maybe you're filling that. Is that an accurate description?
Absolutely, spot on. So that would be, I try not to sort of compare us to other companies too much, but the space that the Echo Nest filled in being a white labeled, freely available service that you could plug into multiple services, that's exactly what we do. And as you say, they sold to Spotify in 2014, so the technology is wildly different, but the purpose is similar. So yeah. Good analysis.
Makes sense. And are there any other kind of use cases? We talked about sync, we talked about playlisting, you talked about tagging in a more general sense. Is there any other kind of use cases that you think early adopters of Musiio will probably engage with most?
There's been a bunch. Like, I've had some really great conversations with aggregators, who are sending their audio to the DSPs. And they say that, for like every field that they add, that the artist has to fill in, the artist got to fill in their own name, they got to fill in the title, if they got to fill in the genres, the BPM, the key, the more fields you put, the more pushback you get from the artists who just don't want to fill it in. So, I've been asked several times, can Musiio pre-fill that information based on the audio file they upload? And the answer is yes. So that's a really exciting new segment.
That's cool. Let's bring it back to Midem. What's the one thing that you hope to get at something like Midem that would have the biggest impact on Musiio?
It's the biggest thing I'm looking for is that introduction to potential customers. So, I've, that was what was great about pitching at Midemlab. I think I've said it before, but for me, it's not about the win. It's about the people who walk up to me afterwards and hand me their business card and go, we want to talk to you. They're the people that I want to talk to.
Yeah, and it's hard sometimes when you're competing with like the super sexy app that is going to make music right away, or do different things like that, or have artist facing sometimes. That's obviously a need in the industry, but just to have the chance to showcase and have those conversations, start to bring up, help people start to think about how would they use these different applications.
Yeah, it's about letting people know what we do as well. It's if we just sit in our office in Singapore and wait for people to find us, that's going to take too long. So for us, it's about getting out to these conferences. I love it. I love seeing the people that I've seen at Nylon Connect and South by, and there's this great guy called Philip Greffer who runs a conference in Beijing. And I've met him 4 times now, only at conferences. So Philip is officially my conference buddy. And I'm like, Philip's here, yes! So, I just love it. I come see the same bunch of people, and it's like a little big global family.
Do you, given all that experience that you have in the industry and just going around to events, are there any that maybe our listeners haven't heard of in addition to that one that you would sort of say, keep an ear to the ground or consider checking it out?
I mean, obviously, I don't think anyone listening to this is not going to have heard of South by or Midem, but they're real must-haves for me. But the other one I would say for anyone who's less familiar, Music Matters in Singapore. Oh. So it's in September every year, and I've been the last 4 years, and it is just growing strength on strength. And what's amazing is if you want that gateway to Asia, you want to meet the guys from Tencent, you want to meet the guys from NetEase, SoftBank, they're at Music Matters. They might not necessarily be here. So if you want to come and do some business in Asia and find out what's going on there, it's a really slick, really great event.
And what time of year is it?
September every year.
And how big is it? Like, how many people do you think are there? Thousands, not hundreds, but not tens of thousands?
Yeah, thousands, not hundreds, not tens of thousands. Like, they have it at one of the bigger hotels. I think it's at the Ritz-Carlton, and it's a kind of takeover of like 3 or 4 floors. So it's maybe not quite as big as Midem, but yeah, certainly bigger than a lot of the smaller conferences. Gotcha. But yeah, that would be my top tip.
Awesome. That's great. So what other startups have you been excited to either see again or meet at Midemlab this year?
So honestly, like the camaraderie and the like groups. I was doing like selfies, like especially from the category I was in, data analytics and marketing. Legendary, who won the category, their CEO is just such a.
We just had her on. She's brilliant,
an amazing darling, and so clever, like PhD scientist. I mean, come on, like I can't compete with that. And then and also there was Eduardo from Barcelona with Music List, and so the 3 of us were just like buddied up the whole time. Every time one of us got off the stage, it was fist bumps. Like we had the real like pack mentality. So the people in my category I enjoyed meeting. In terms of the actual apps themselves and like who I wanted to meet, I gotta say, and it's not gonna, you probably keep getting the same answer, but Jamble. So, because I was just randomly sat in the speakers lounge. Your guy from Jamble comes in, your CEO, and he sits down and he just pitches me the app. He gets the phone out. He starts making a beat. Then I start making the beat on top. We're both pressing the keys. Next thing you know, we've got this cool little song that we've just collaborated on. And then he shoots a video of us, and then it's on Instagram, and I'm sharing it with my crowd. He's sharing it with his crowd. And now every time I walk past him in the corridor, we sing that little jam to each other. And I'm just like, so if he's listening, that's the track. And I was like, we just collaborated for no reason.
That's awesome.
Right here.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I'm going to track him down. We tried to hook up here, but I'm chasing him down. Don't worry, guys. I'm going to find Gad from Jamble.
Nice.
You guys stay tuned to Music Tectonics because I am going to go find this guy. He's a trip. Guy. Got a nice selfie with him myself after he tied for the music creation and education category with Endless.
Yep.
So I think that's on my Instagram right now if you want to see a pretty funny bounce, because he was wearing crazy pants and I was wearing crazy pants.
Yeah. You're known for it. He's kind of getting in on your look there, Dmitri.
Well, I'm going to talk to him about royalties and stuff about that as well. So I think I'll talk to Legendary and audit his royalties on my crazy pants.
Yeah, just audit his crazy trousers.
Let's go to this trousers, right? Just thank you. Cool. Well, Hazel, thank you so much for joining me. Thanks for all the great energy you bring to this. I'm sure other Midemlab participants really felt your energy. You just bring it on, and it's awesome to see.
Thanks, Dmitri.
Yeah.
It's been a lot of fun. Was that really 15 minutes? That's flown. that was so fast.
So thanks so much for listening to Music Tectonics. Please hit the subscribe button on your favorite podcast app and check out musictectonics.com to find out about our conference, October 28th and 29th in Los Angeles. Sign up for our newsletter and we'll keep you posted. I got to go find Gad. See you.
You're listening to Music Tectonics.